After the release and monumental success of Jaws in 1975, there were plenty of imitators and duplicators. Some of them got it right, and some of them didn't. Well, today I'm talking about one of the movies that absolutely got it right. Razorback was filmed in Australia and released in 1984. It was directed by Russell Mulcahy, who was best known at the time as a prolific music video director. He would actually direct music videos in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. His IMDb is really long. If you're interested, you should really check it out. It's pretty interesting. But for an old school movie geek like me, he's probably best known for directing The Highlander. He also directed Highlander 2. We're not really going to talk about that. I was fortunate enough to first see this movie way back in 1986 when I was 8 years old. My dad rented it from the video store, and we all sat around and watched this glorious Jaws ripoff. And you know what? I'm not even going to call it a Jaws ripoff anymore, because I honestly didn't even consider it that until very recently. Watching this movie, it doesn't really make you think about the movie Jaws. But whether you're like me and you think this movie's great, or you think it absolutely sucks, the one thing you can't deny is how it looks. This movie has some of the best cinematography you'll see in any horror movie. It really reminds you of an 80s music video. Like those Duran Duran videos that the director directed, they really do look like this movie, or maybe vice versa. It is a very distinct visual flair and visual style, and the cinematographer did a wonderful job in this movie. This was the director's first feature film debut, and I think he knocked it out of the park. And the cinematographer, Dean Semler, previously worked on The Road Warrior, and he would later go on to win an Oscar for Dances with Wolves. So besides the visuals, what else makes this movie awesome in my opinion? Well, first, it's a simple, relatable story. Whether it's believable or not is irrelevant. The film starts out with a really dramatic scene of the boar running through an old man's house, taking his grandson with him. The old man is arrested and prosecuted for murder, but they were never able to find the body and never able to find actual proof that he harmed his grandson. 2 years have passed, and the old man, whose name is Jake, is basically going on a hunting rampage. He's been trying to find this boar for the last 2 years. Most of the townsfolk don't really believe his story because he can't find the boar to prove it. All of that takes place before and during the opening credits. And then in what I believe is a pretty good use of misdirection, you're introduced to the person you think is the main character of this movie. This is Beth, and she's a reporter for an animal rights organization. You meet her and her husband Carl, and you find out pretty much everything you need to know about them in the first few minutes. You find out that they're married and that she's pregnant, and she's hesitant about doing this story in Australia about kangaroo slaughter. Carl talks her into it and encourages her to go. Of course, someone with her background isn't exactly welcome in this small outback town, and during her investigation, she gets herself into some trouble, and she's nearly assaulted by 2 creeps. Not before they're scared off by the Razorback, which ends up killing Beth. Now, if you're coming into this movie blind, you honestly wouldn't see this coming. The way the film sets up Beth, you're just not expecting her to get killed in the first 25 minutes of the movie. This is when we're reintroduced to Carl when he visits the small town to try to find out what happened to his wife. As far as he knows, authorities told him that she's missing and presumably fell down a mine shaft. Now, I've spoken a lot already, but I don't want to give away this entire movie because I really feel like it deserves a watch. But I would like to speak on some of the effects and gore in this film. Most of the gore in Razorback is animal related. There really isn't a lot of gore involving humans, although when Beth is being killed by the boar, you can hear it crunching on her bones. Which makes you imagine what's happening, which is almost as bad as seeing it. Bob McCarran helped bring the Razorback to life. The crew created 6 different boars for the film, all with different purposes. The boar in the film is described as being the size of a rhinoceros. So the crew did a pretty decent job with the creature effects. I mean, there are some wide shots that look a little wonky, but the close-up shots are incredible. I mean, I was a kid at the time, but this movie made me legitimately scared of wild boars. I mean, it's one thing to be scared of werewolves or gremlins, but wild boars are real. So I always had a fear that I'd run into one in the woods or something. The last great thing about this movie I want to mention is the atmosphere. I talked about the visuals, but the way this movie makes you feel just makes it that much better. It's really dusty and dirty and grimy, and you feel like everyone in this movie needs a shower. But it fits perfectly into the story and into the cinematography. So how did Razorback do theatrically? Well, not too good. It was made on a budget of 5.5 million Aussie bucks, and it made less than $1 million back. Couldn't really find the data for the US release, but the movie seems to have found its footing on VHS and cable. So what do I think about Razorback? This movie is brilliant. It's a great horror flick. Even if you want to call it a Jaws ripoff, it's a really good one. I highly recommend you watching it. It's not really available for free on streaming, although I do believe it's on Prime Video if you have that service. Otherwise, you'd have to find it online and rent it, or find a physical copy, or other ways to find the film. Although it's absolutely worth it. You should really check it out. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share it, subscribe if you're not, and I'll be back soon. Thanks.
He's only got 2 states of being. Dangerous or dead. Nothing in between.